Midwestern guy coming from Oregon out here, what did you have to teach these guys about the Midwest?
Oh gosh. Well, first off, it's God's country, right? Had to explain that to them. They kept asking me where all the mountains were, and I go, "Hey, buddy, there's no mountains. There's some hills." But food wise, for me, being a Cincinnati guy, kind of getting Coach Mahalchek and Coach Smith going on some Skyline chili. The square pizza out here, the Detroit style. That was fun to kind of get those guys into. But overall, it's been a blast being back, I can tell you that much.
Do you remember Michigan State much? Did you visit
Yes.
here?
Yes.
For camp, maybe?
I remember them all too well. This was one of my first visits in the recruiting process. And I remember being called in Coach D'Antonio's office when he was at Cincinnati, kind of lived in a nearby town. And I was all excited. They ended up taking Deion Sims, who was a pretty good tight end for you guys. So I don't blame him on that. And then, obviously, the college experience, the games, the battles against Michigan State, I've tried to forget just because they're so painful. I mean, it was like one of the teams. I remember we had a losing record against them my 4 or 5 years at the University of Wisconsin. So remember a lot about this place. Dang good teams, tough teams, blue-collar teams, kind of right up our alley.
A lot of epic battles, too, though.
Yeah. There was, really, the 1 year, right, Michigan State won on the Hail Mary. That was a killer. We actually lost in 2 Hail Marys back-to-back weeks that year.
That the 11 year.
Yeah, and then playing them in the inaugural Big Ten championship. It was just a battle. Like those were awesome games, right? Those are Big Ten games, what it's all about. And this place was rolling then.
How much does that staff, the rest of the staff, kind of need someone? Like, are you teaching them about Big Ten ways, or do they? Kind of
we've been fortunate. We got Joe Ross, we got Chad, we got a couple guys that have been through it. I mean, Meat played here. I know he's been on the West Coast, but played here. So it's not all falling onto my shoulders. Coach Smith studied it. If you guys know anything about Jonathan Smith, he's going to be about 5 steps ahead of you. I've tried. You try to pin him down, and he's always got something. So he's studying it and doing what he needs to do. For me, it's just every day you come in with a smile because you're kind of back in these roots. And shoot, my family's coming up this weekend. Got another set of family coming up next weekend. We didn't get that luxury when we were out west. So.
Have you enjoyed helping to reestablish the recruiting infrastructure that was so good in the Midwest here, but kind of eroded over the years?
Absolutely. Like I think about it too. Like I'm from Ohio, right? I go back to, think of when, this place was rolling. A lot of that, the roster was obviously Michigan guys in bulk, but there was a lot of Ohio guys in bulk too. And again, can't take everybody out of Michigan, can't take everybody out of Ohio, surrounding areas, right? But we want to be aggressive in those areas. So that's been fun, diving into it and looking into it. And again, kind of showing this place what it can be.
How have you and Michigan State been received as you've gone to the Ohio high school so far?
I think it's been good. A lot of, hey, it's great to see, Sparty back in the schools. Old stories and being able to mix it up. Sometimes I got some connections to that coach that we neither of us knew before going into the school. So it's been fun that way. And I think it's been good, kind of painting these Midwest states in green a little bit, letting those guys know, hey, we're here, we're ready to hunt.
Looking at the guys you had at Oregon State, it looked like 3-down, multi-dimensional type of guys. Just could you sort of explain your ideal profile of what you look for at your position?
Tight end? I think the best way I describe it, I'm a hooper. Loved hoops growing up. Like most tight ends, I think we all thought we were going to be hoopers, right? It's like, no, you're 6'5", there's not a lot of 6'5" guys in the NBA, right? So the best way I describe it, I like that power forward, that forward position, kind of that guy hand on the ground, not a one-trick pony, still out getting passes and whatnot. And then that 3 guard, that slasher, right, coming down the lane. He's got the ability to kind of be off the ball a little bit more, maybe, but he's that slasher, still viable in the run game for us as well. So you mix those two, and the more like you get them, the harder it is for defense to defend you, right? You're going to play us in base, great. We're going to spread it out. We're going to throw it all over you. Play us in nickel, great. We're going to shrink it down, right? We're going to run the ball right down your throat. That's kind of my mindset and our mindset as an offense as we look at it.
Talk about your journey in coaching. When did you decide this is a
profession I want to get in? And
Oh,
just
right
getting
away.
to this point?
Right away, I was pretty fortunate. I had an all-time high school coach, Andrew Marlette, Chuck Ogden, those guys kind of building me up. And then through the recruiting process, I had an awesome coach in Joe Rudolph. Paul Chris was the OC at the time. Just his, those personalities kind of surrounded me, and the way they did it, it just it influenced me to want to get into this thing. And I knew kind of early on in college, freshman, sophomore year, like, man, I love ball. Like, I know sports, right? Like, I don't want to go sit in an office and wear a suit. Like this is what I want to do. And just this connection, right, with these kids out here. Even a new set of kids don't know all of them, right? But man, diving into them, that's what makes this profession fun.
Obviously, you've had Jack, but what have you seen? Basanos was a guy that Coach was talking about here a few minutes ago.
Yeah. No, the group overall been pleasantly surprised, really, the best way I would put it. And starting with Michael, didn't know, right? Just didn't have a ton of tape on him. I think he battled some injuries early on in his time here, and really, kid hasn't missed a step. He's smart. He's into it. He gets it. Football IQ, like he's speaking his language a little bit. He's a tough physical guy, but again, he's not that one-trick pony, right? He can go out and get some pass reps as well. Down the list, Mola's been a pleasant surprise, just kind of building him up. He looks different. You guys have probably seen him from last year, and the guy's 252 pounds right now, and he can still move. Jacket in there, getting physical, nickel. And then, obviously having Belling for the last 2 years, kind of knew what we were going to get, but he, still pushing him to take another step in his game.
That connection that he's already had working with Aiden, when you need that, especially for a first-time starter, everyone talks about the security blanket that a tight end brings, but that having those reps with him, how much does that help maybe Aiden's transition to the other guys on the outside?
Well, I think the coolest thing about Belling is how he is as a teammate, right? I think he's a really good player, all that stuff, don't get me wrong, but how he is as a teammate, right? So he's always going to be that approachable teammate, whether it's a receiver, whether it's a tackle, whether it's a QB. So I think having that aspect to his game, he's going to help the guys around him, right? And for Aiden, it is, right? For all these QBs, right? We talk about all the time in the tight end room. We are their security blanket. That is our goal, right? In the pass game, we are their security blanket. And what that means is the details in our game. Once they see us fighting and clawing to have the details in our game, right, we hope it kind of expands out, right? QBs start to recognize it. They start coming to us more, right? Receivers may see that, okay, they're detailed, that's right, let's get the ball more, boom. And then it kind of becomes a little contagious that way.
What did it mean to you that Jack wanted to come follow and be a part of it again? He was over here the other day talking about it was pretty much for him going to be staying there in his comfort zone or coming to play for you again. There wasn't really many other options for him. Just for him to pick you again and want to keep going and on the trajectory that you guys have put together. Just what did that mean to you?
Oh, no, it was great. There's always, like I said, I think different in coaching, and everybody has a different approach, but the connection to players is always big. And so having a deep enough rooted connection for him to be interested in coming out here right away from home, right? He's from Seattle, is awesome. Like trusting his parents, trusting him for, hey, you're moving to Michigan, probably never lived here before in your life. Like, that's awesome. But again, the same tone, it was, we're coming out here to work. We're coming out here to get better. We're coming out here to improve, right? Not only individually, but as a team. And again, that's the kind of guy that can buy into that stuff and makes it easy for me.
Daniel, I know he had a season-ending injury last year. Has he been able to do anything for you guys, or is he still coming back?
No, he's still working his way back. Yeah, still working his way back. Haven't seen him out there yet. He's working though. He kind of got a little sprint in today, so it's good to see him getting back into it.
What were your thoughts on the scrimmage from your perspective and your guys?
Oh, we got to be better. I think, and that's the great thing about, the first scrimmage. We got to be better. Obviously, ball security pops up for us. First time being tackled, all that stuff. And then I think, too, just live reps, what happens to those details, right, as you're rolling, right? You can't lose the details just because all of a sudden now it's live, right? It's a full process to it. So you add those two things up, and again, there's some positive things in there. We're not going to dwell on the negatives, but you add those two things up, there's plenty to get better at.
Jack Velling was talking about that he still has a lot of work to do in terms of blocking. How long does the blocking piece take for some of the other guys, and it's for him? And
Is that something that the way you guys do it that can be done in a spring and an August camp in 1 year?
I think he's being tough on himself with that. He can always improve, but he's done a pretty good job this spring, especially when you match him up correctly. But I do think anytime you bring a high school kid to college, right, and running the schemes we are, like the blocking is always going to be second, right, because it's harder to teach, it's harder to get comfortable with. It's the most muscle memory, even compared to a depth on a route or whatnot. So I do think guys are always looking to make that part of the game. And what we talk about too is when we are good in the run game, when the tight end room is good in the run game, we just open up a whole can of worms for us when it comes to the pass game, play action in particular. So anytime we talk about the run, it's always in our minds a little bit in the tight end room. I think it's like, well, yeah, I want to be good at the run so I can get the rock, right? So that's kind of how it goes. No block, no rock, right? So.
Jonathan mentioned last week that Pearcheck wasn't quite available. Do you know when any
hopefully soon. I think he's scheduled to be out rolling. Probably sometime in May, June, to where he's hitting the ground running, which we're excited about. We're excited to see him run around. Again, I think that's one of those guys like football speaks to him. Like it just comes so easy. And I know he's itching to get going. Right? He's a big talented kid and definitely can help us.
What are the differences between Pac-12 football and Big Ten football? What, like particularly with those other schools coming in, like vice versa, how is that going to be for the Big Ten to adjust to that style?
Well, I think it'll be interesting. I think there's going to be so much adjustment, just across the board. Like you talk about those schools and traveling here, right? I think those schools and some weather here, right? Us and weather out there, right? Like you go to USC in November, it's going to be a different temperature than in East Lansing. So I think there's a lot of those little adjustments that people maybe aren't talking about as much. But I do think when you break down those two conferences, front seven in this Big Ten is different, right? Bigger, stronger. And then I think out there, it was like you look at that conference last year, and then you guys should ask Blue Adams about it or Coach Mead about it, like the pass game out there, man. Those quarterbacks, there was 7, 8 guys that, oh God, here we go again. Here's another quarterback. So there's some differences that way. I think both are equally talented. I think any given Saturday, it's one of those things. But that's probably the two biggest differences.
I know it's only like maybe it's a sixth of your schedule in the regular season to play those games.
Yeah.
But, it seems like that helps to have.
Yeah,
like you mentioned with me too. You got different.
Yeah. Well, we're going to Oregon, this year, and I think on this staff with the full-time guys, I think there's 7 of us that played in that stadium in the last 2 years. Coached in that stadium in the last 2 years. Then you talk about some of our players, so there's some familiarity, but they're a talented team. So.
You guys good with Coach?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.